So I really haven't done too much. This is actually the first time I've spoken to people.
Oh,
real
is it?
people,
Oh.
in a couple of weeks.
Did
It's
you
been really nice, actually.
Did you have a nice Christmas and New Year?
Yeah, it's alright. It's
Yeah.
quite quiet. Like, I spoke to a lot of people on the phone and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been okay.
That's it, 'cause we're not allowed to go around and see anyone, aren't we? So it's a bit nightmarish. What was your thoughts on what happened with Sadiq with the firework display?
That, I mean, it's awful, isn't it? I mean, this is a Marxist fist in the sky with drones. I mean, really, what? It's almost incomprehensible.
Yeah.
Should happen in London. This is a symbol of.
I think it's caused an uproar because it got political and it was New Year, so it should have been political.
Right. It should be about just celebrating the turn of the year and looking forward, not putting up some symbol of a Marxist organisation. You know what Black Lives Matter stands for? Defunding the police. So how can the mayor, who's in charge of the police in London, put up a symbol on New Year's Eve of an organisation that wants to defund the police?
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. I mean, he's kind of saying that he wants to abolish, something that he's in charge of, if you think about it. And they also want to disrupt the natural nuclear family, and they want to smash capitalism. It's ridiculous, this organisation. It gets too much credibility from people like Sadiq Khan and, other people in Parliament as well, of all sides.
Yeah.
So we've really got to stand up to this and call it out for what it is.
Definitely, yeah. I know it's caused a big uproar on Twitter and that, isn't it? Yeah. I had a few rants say yesterday.
Saying, it was quite good, wasn't it? Well, no.
I couldn't believe where he says.
Can I ask, what would you have done with the 1.5 million Sadiq Khan wasted on the light show and fireworks?
Well, I think I'd have a much better fireworks display. I mean, people want fireworks. I know it's a lot of money, but this is something you can do to celebrate New Year's Eve. But I mean, obviously, I would say we should have people out because this COVID thing is not, a deadly disease that's killing everybody. All the numbers are inflated and twisted, and so people should be allowed out to celebrate on New Year's Eve. And we would have had a proper fireworks display that would celebrate London and Britain and the United Kingdom and Brexit.
Do you think
with
the current regulations, and I thought the display and the show was pretty pitiful compared to other years. The fireworks display was disgusting. I can't see how that cost 1.5 million. It would be good to know who owns the company who supplied all the lights.
Well, we can look into that. I don't know.
Is it one of Sadiq Khan's family members, or is it someone connected to him?
It could be. I don't know the answer to that at the moment, but I know there was a story about cronyism in some of the contracts he's given out to tender without doing a competitive tendering process. So, that's certainly something to look into.
And he didn't even do it in the centre of London. It was Greenwich.
Right, exactly. So people wouldn't go and see it. So that was the thing. No, it was all a bit. It was rubbish, but then the bits of it that what people talking with this BLM sort of fist, so
political, very political.
Yeah, exactly. We don't need this.
There's a lot of footage at the minute with all the hospitals being quite empty. What do you think of that?
I mean, I've seen some of them. I mean, there was the one in Gloucester that everyone knows about where the woman got arrested afterwards. Right, exactly. People, I know her. So, I mean,
and then
she obviously went around and saw that. And, I mean, why would you arrest someone for just taking photos of an empty hospital ward? It doesn't make any sense. And this is overreach in the extreme from the authorities, the police, putting into practice, what someone has told them to do. I think the people higher up the chain are sort of telling them to do this, but also the people who are doing this, there's no excuse for them, that they're just following orders for going around and arresting an innocent woman.
Well, I was at the hospital the other day, and it was
for taking some pictures.
I was at the hospital the other day, and I noticed everywhere was quiet there, so I started filming. And then when I realised she'd been arrested, I had to take it off because I'd put it on Twitter. I thought I'd take it off because I didn't make any commentary or anything, but I thought I'm not risking it because it's just not fair.
This is the psychology that they do, don't they? They have someone and then we all self-censor.
This is it.
Even though this is very important information to get out.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know about every single hospital, but, you know, because they do tend to get busy this time of year, because it's winter. More people have flu. And surprisingly, flu is the lowest ever cases of flu in history. Well, maybe not in history, but for a very, very long time. And it's all been replaced by COVID, you know. So people are twisting and manipulating numbers. Yeah, there are some hospitals that are full, that you get that normally in winter, but there are some hospitals that are much emptier than usual if you look at the figures. So, you know, there's nothing, I think, that, you know, if you look at it in the round, there's nothing extreme going on here. We're not in the middle of a deadly pandemic like the Black Death, which is what they seem to be trying to ramp up and make everybody afraid of.
And these Nightingale hospitals, is it true they're all being dismantled, or are they dormant? What's happening with those?
As far as I know, you know, some of them have been dismantled. As far as I know, the one in London doesn't seem that there's any equipment in there, and you hear different things from different people about it, but they're certainly not being used. You know,
I heard rumours it was about £6 million spent on the Nightingale hospitals or something, so is it more than that then?
It was a lot more than
More.
that.
So
As
that's
far as I know,
a bit of
it
wasted
might be
money.
600 million as far as something like that. I think it's a couple of orders.
250. Was it?
Yeah,
Yes.
it's a huge waste of money. But, you know, I mean, that's nothing compared to the whole amount of money that they've wasted on this. I mean, they've spent, what is it, 300 to 400 billion on the whole COVID thing, whether it's the Nightingale hospitals, the testing, the track and trace, and all of the other things, and all the sort of furlough schemes are saying to people, you can't work, but we're going to pay 80% of your wages. And I think most people just want to get on and work because they want their businesses to carry on. You know, so they're basically paying people not to work, which is, there's no reason for this, and, you know, this has been shown to be so. But they're just continuing with this destructive policy in many areas. So, you know, they're wasting, I don't know, I heard some estimate of about £1 billion a day on this, you know, which is going to bankrupt the country if it goes on for another year.
And there's rumours that it's going to go into tier 5.
I've heard this, and you know, when something gets leaked or something gets announced, it usually happens a week or 2 or 3 later. So I don't know if it's going to happen, but I wouldn't be surprised if they try to do something else, and I don't know what that would be. If it's just, you know, they've already announced that in some areas schools aren't going to go back, so I mean that might be the extra restriction that they're doing. They might do more. I don't know. Okay.
Yeah. What's your thoughts on Piers Corbyn running for mayor?
Yeah, I heard that last night. I mean, the thing is, I mean, on a lot of things I would agree with him on. You know, we would certainly agree that these restrictions are wrong. You know, I think in the London elections, you get 2 choices. You get a first vote and a second vote in the London elections. So, you know, someone could vote for me, number 1, Piers Corbyn for number 2, and then they could vote for both of us if they wanted to. You know, so the system in London means that it's not really important.
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much.
So do you think that all Metropolitan Police officers should be issued a copy of 1984? Or are you concerned that they use it as an instruction manual?
I certainly think they should have it, and they should learn from it. You know, there's so much we should learn from history. These books are written to warn us by people who are visionaries about what could happen in the future if we don't stand up to tyranny. But we've got this coming in now, and it's amazing that you've got a lot of police officers who are just seeming to be enforcing this tyranny. Sorry. I think that's heckler or something. Anyway, yeah, and so yeah, it's very, very worrying. Very, very worrying what's going on, and you know, they need to respect our human rights and fundamental freedoms.
Can I ask, will you be down there in 2 days? It's on the 5th of January in the Old Bailey for Julian Assange.
Yeah.
I was just going to say that. That's an interesting question.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Julian Assange should not be in jail. I mean, he's a whistleblower. He's done nothing wrong. All he's done is speak the truth. He hasn't even told a lie about anything, and he's in prison because you know, some people don't like the truth coming out. But you know, what he's done is very valuable service to humanity. He's a political prisoner. He shouldn't be there, and he's been treated appallingly by the powers that be, keeping him locked up on trumped-up charges and false pretenses. So I'll certainly be there on Monday with many other people who our lovers of freedom and truth to call for him to be released.
And what do you think about mass surveillance in general?
Well, it's terrible. There shouldn't be mass surveillance. Why do we need mass surveillance? I mean, just because the technology to do something exists doesn't mean we should use it. You know, we got the technology to do all kinds of things which are good and which are also destructive. But you know, people should be free to live lives that are anonymous and to have a private life. And yes, in a public space, in a town centre, you know, you do need things perhaps to check if there's crime going on. You don't want people committing robbery and theft and pickpocketing and things like that. But I mean, generally surveilling people to see, what they say, who they talk to, who their friends are, what they write on the internet, what they're writing in text messages to people. I mean, that shouldn't be done at all. And what really worries me is something that happened a couple of months ago in Parliament. There was a new bill introduced. I can't remember the name of it now, but it's given...
Covert human intelligence sources.
You know exactly what I'm talking about. It's giving state operatives basically immunity from prosecution. They're allowed to break the law with immunity, and there'll be no comeback. So that's very, very worrying and very, very true. It's tyrannical, basically. People who are working for the state should respect and obey the law. I mean, you shouldn't be allowed to go and do things that are illegal that might harm people, and then not have any kind of comeback for it just because you were working for the state.
Boris Johnson!
So obviously your party is the Heritage Party. Where can people go to find out more information about it?
Yeah, so you can look on heritageparty.org, and our manifesto's there. You can
Hang Boris Johnson!
And you can
Hang Wuhan Cop!
You can look at our manifesto there, and you can join up and you can sign up there. So heritageparty.org.
And there's going to be activism soon, I think, and they can email in to say that they're activists.
Yeah, so you can sign up as a volunteer as well. Obviously, we'd love people to sign up as members. So if you do, then you can join a branch and you can stand as a candidate. But you can also, sign up as a volunteer. We will have some action days soon where we can give out some leaflets and so on. And, especially in London, someone's standing to be the mayor, so that we can get rid of Sadiq Khan, and we would like to do that. So if you want to help and get involved in fighting for the mayoralty to return to sanity, please join us.
Thanks for joining me.
Right, yeah. Thank you.
Thanks a million.
Brilliant.
Any other questions? This gentleman over here, he got grabbed down on one of the last protests. Literally, he was walking away. He got grabbed, and then I got grabbed.
Really expensive.
By the people you don't want to be grabbed by.
TSG.
Oh
What do you think about the TSG? Would you disband them? Are they under the Metropolitan Police?
They are, as far as I know, they're under the Metropolitan Police. I mean, if there are real riots, you do need something to actually be able to control and disperse riots. And you do have real things going on that are a danger to normal people. But I mean, you shouldn't be using the riot police to disperse a peaceful crowd. This is not a riot, and I've seen them out in all the freedom rallies where people are just, they are advocating, marching, rallying, protesting for the return of our civil liberties. It's not a riot. So you don't need the riot police to go in and behave with utter brutality against ordinary citizens. That's absolutely wrong. You do need some police that can deal with extreme violence if that happens. You do need police, obviously, to deal with terrorism and so on. But you don't need police, and they certainly should not be treating innocent civilians and peaceful civilians as if they're criminals.
Yeah.
So, do you think there should be extra checks, or maybe some sort of need to sort of confirm that what the mayor's action in sending in the TSG? Do you think there should be some sort of oversight by the Assembly, so that the mayor doesn't just have carte blanche over the TSG?
Yeah, right.
Private army.
Well, I've asked the mayor in the Assembly about these kind of things a couple of times, and he's usually just said, well, I don't really know the answer. You should ask Cressida Dick, or I'll find out to you, or why don't you write to me and I'll write back to you, or something. He doesn't seem to have any clue about, what's been going on the streets of London in terms of these rallies and demonstrations. But yeah, there needs to be some very strong scrutiny of the TSG and the Metropolitan Police if they're going to be using force in a manner which is, which can be necessary at some times, obviously to arrest real criminals. But when that, permission to use force is misused and abused, then it needs to be stopped. And well, it shouldn't happen in the first place. So we really need a whole look into this and to make sure that they stop doing this kind of thing that's been happening today and on many of the other freedom rallies over the last 6 months. And that kind of use of extreme force is just reserved for arresting real criminals like murderers and terrorists and rapists and grooming gangs and pedophiles.
He seems to be a mayor that doesn't know what's going on in his own city, I think, the way when we watch these question times and that.
Yeah.
But is he aware of like the knife crime that's going on in the city as well? Like we're going to the 2021, as in one night there was 3 stabbings. So is he aware of that? Even.
Well, he does seem to come out with some platitudes when something goes on. This is a terrible thing, but it goes on, and nothing seems to change.
Yeah.
And this is, I think, because the police have been focused first of all on policing, political correctness. They're looking at people's tweets on the internet to see, if you say something that's politically incorrect, we're going to drag you through the courts. We're going to, policing speech.
Yeah.
And now they're policing peaceful protesters who are demonstrating for civil liberties. So the whole focus of what the police has been doing has been wrong. You've got the whole diversity, equality and inclusion agenda, where I would say, it's very simple. As I said before, the police are there to catch criminals, to arrest criminals. Murderers, thieves, rapists, arsonists, burglars. You've got to catch those people. But don't be, politicising it and, using the police to be nice to Black Lives Matter, send out nice liaison officers to make sure that they're all having a nice time. But then you've got, freedom rally people being treated with a truncheon over their head.
Yeah. You can see the difference. What was that one?
He wants to ask about the voting.
Why do you think pushing some of the police out to these protesters?
Well, I mean, you've got all the old parties, whether it's Conservative, what I call the fake Conservatives, Labour, Lib Dem, Greens, they're all of one accord on this. I mean, I look at them and I just think, they're basically one big party with like 4 different colours. You've got the pretense that there's 4 different parties there, but they're all pretty much the same, and they're all like completely on the globalist agenda, So Agenda 31, Agenda 2030, Agenda 21. You've got the smart cities agenda. You've also got the strong cities network. So London's in both smart cities network, C40 cities, and the strong cities network. And the strong cities network is a network of cities globally, which sort of pushes the globalist agenda around democracy. So it works around, flanks the democratic system and can impose something without people realising. So that you've got it's ostensibly to fight terrorism, but they're looking at these kind of things and saying, well, this is basically far right. All the far right is here, so there's a danger that this is terrorist, and we've got to clamp down on it and stop it. Whereas, you've got the Black Lives Matter, and they're like, well, this is wonderful because this is about equality and diversity. So that we'll let that go because that's good. But this, that's possibly far right, terrorist. We need to clamp down on it, and that's sort of coming through the Strong Cities network. And there's a lot more you can read about it, and the agenda's there. You've got the whole state of Victoria in Australia. The whole state is in the Strong Cities network. I think it's the only place that's bigger than a city. You've also got Birmingham and Manchester, Luton and Leicester in this country that are in the Strong Cities network, and you see sometimes the police in those cities acting in similar way. I must say though, when I went to Birmingham on the 5th of December, they were very nice.
Yeah, we were there then. Yeah.
We were there. It was a lovely, peaceful rally.
They were even taking leaflets from people doing the demonstrations in the cars. So yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
What do you think? What's your thoughts on the voting machines?
Yeah, well, there shouldn't be voting machines in this country or anywhere. They should be counted by hand.
Yeah.
You know, I did ask the question of Sadiq Khan in December, written question, and he hasn't answered it yet. So, you know, I said, what are you going to do? What's the GLA going to do to remove these e-counting machines, given the allegations of election fraud in the USA?
I was just going to say that, yeah.
So I've asked the question now. You know, I tweeted about it yesterday, and I think a lot of people, that's raised awareness. A lot of people are asking the question now because you've got the contract in London, I think it's given to Smartmatic and another company. So that is very worrying considering what's happened in the USA. So it's something that we're looking into.
What about the postal vote? So is that likely to carry on, or do you think that should be quashed because so many people double vote?
Yeah, well, my view is that postal voting should be only for people who have a serious disability or veterans, or you know, people who are doing military service,
overseas,
and you know, overseas, and they can't vote. You know, where they're registered to vote. It shouldn't be for everybody. So you know, we need to go back to how it was before, whereas only a few people can have a postal vote for a very, very good reason, and that's it. So. The system we've got now, you know, it's ripe for fraud. And, you know, even the Electoral Commission says there's 16 areas of the UK, mostly in England, where they have serious concerns of voting fraud taking place, including Tower Hamlets, Peterborough, some places up north as well, like
Can I ask, when you're mayor, obviously there's a lot of homelessness with veterans, and there's a lot of difficulty with veterans in this country. Especially in London, it's quite tough. What are you going to do to support veterans in the capital?
Well, there's a lot of really good charities that support veterans, Hope for Heroes and so on. I've spoken to some of them, and you know, in the past, and I certainly think we would do everything we can to work with them and support them because they're experts in, you know, looking after the specific needs of homeless veterans, and they do a lot of the charities that do support homeless veterans. Do amazing work, and they do. I think over the last few years that they have, you know, increased their capacity. But that's certainly something, you know, I'd support. You know, the housing budget of being London there.
I see. Beautiful.
Lovely.
Yeah.
There is talk of these lockdowns that could change just about March,
Well, I would say that's a certainty. You know, that's what they want to do. I mean, I'm opposed to it. But you see what they brought in last March, 2 weeks to flatten the curve, and then it went on for 3 weeks, and it went for 6 weeks, and it was 3 months. Then it was a little break in the summer, then it's locked down again, and then it's, we're breaking, and then it's another lockdown. They're like, you know, playing catch string with us. They're psychologically abusing us as people. Yeah, gaslighting all the time.
That's the key.
Exactly.
The thing that we have scientific evidence. There isn't any scientific evidence.
I know.
Produce the scientific evidence. We're allowed to get away with it.
You're absolutely right.
None of the journalists are asking the right questions, apart from maybe talk radio.
Well, the mainstream media journalists are all part of the system, and they're not asking searching questions, which they might have done in the past.
If you just go and look at the statistics, you'll see there's something not quite right. No, they're relying on us not looking.
Well, it's obvious, you know, to you and I and to millions of people, we look outside the mainstream, so we've all got to turn off the mainstream media. We've all got to turn off the BBC, ITV, Sky, Channel 4, because they don't talk about the inaccuracies of PCR testing at all. And they're not talking about
PCR carrying bullets. He actually said it should not be used.
Exactly.
And then they killed him. And then they killed him. It was 19. He immediately died.
Certainly he said it shouldn't be used.
And one of his final interviews, he was very critical of Tony Fisher. Very, very critical. Basically said that he should not be in a position to do it.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
That's what we're relying on.
So we've got to keep the message going.
People on these PCR tests.
You're right. We've got to keep the message going out that the PCR tests are inaccurate. They're grossly inaccurate, especially when they use a high number of thermal cycles.
Kids are not going back to school.
He said they should only be used at 25 thermal cycles.
And we're using
at
at 35.
Yeah, and so it's obviously very, very inaccurate, but they're still using it. So, you know, if you're watching this, don't believe the PCR testing figures. You know, you said Many people have said, Mike Eden and other people who are experts, scientific experts, and they've said many times that they're completely inaccurate.
Yes.
Right, yeah.
BMJ.
Yeah.
But it's not getting out there in the media. BBC, Sky,
Well, of
not
course,
running with these stories.
I mean, don't hold any hope out that they're going to put it out.
What will you do?
They're not going to. Well, they're not going to put it out. Well, I mean, I've already
What will
said.
you be able to do?
Well,
When?
Okay, well, you know what I said is. Thank you very much. I mean, the mayor's in charge of transport. The mayor's in charge of police and crime. So what I would say is that with the police, if I'm the police and crime commissioner, I'll make sure the police are not enforcing rules which are taking away our freedoms, rules which are legally repugnant, which are against our fundamental human rights and freedoms, which is what's happening. We'll stop that, and we'll make sure the police are focused on catching criminals and not taking away our citizens. Right. I haven't spoken to the Police Federation myself, but that's something I can look into. Yeah, it goes worth a try. Yeah.
What would you be doing regarding imposing the vaccination, making it mandatory? I presume that you'd be pushing back on that when London is discriminated against, going into restaurants, or going to gyms, or getting on a flight because they refuse to have the vaccination. Where do you stand with that?
Well, yeah, vaccination should not be mandatory in any way whatsoever. If people want to have a vaccine, they can have a vaccine. But no one should be restricted from doing anything or treated any differently for any service or any entry into any place because they don't have a vaccine. That goes without saying. I mean, there should not be this medical coercion which people are talking about. I mean, you do have the they put in now a vaccine minister, isn't it? What's his name? Zahawi. Zahawi's what's his first name? Yeah, that's the one. Iraqi, British Iraqi. Anyway, he said that there won't be any coercion. But, yeah, well, I don't know. That's what he said. I hope that's true. But we've got to make sure that it is true. Obviously, if I'm the mayor of London, I'll be saying that, things should be opening up and nobody should be disadvantaged if they don't have a vaccine. It's very simple.
Are you concerned that there's no criminal liability whatsoever for the companies that make the vaccine if there are side effects?
Yeah, well, this has been something that's been the case for many, many years. It's a system they put in place, I don't know how many years ago, but I think a couple of decades ago. It was absolutely wrong. That the manufacturers should have liability if there are side effects. It's, the same kind of liability that they would have, for people who make normal medicines.
Yeah, or a car,
yeah, right, exactly. Yes, yeah, right. So, for example, thalidomide, the company that made thalidomide, I don't know which one it was, back in the 50s, and they had to pay damages to people because of the side effects. So that should be the same with vaccines.
But they're not, aren't they? That's clear. The government made it very clear. The companies do not have any liability at all. And people are still happy to take the vaccine?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't take a vaccine. I'm not taking a vaccine where the companies don't have any liability. So, I wouldn't recommend that anybody else does as well.
When you talk about the lack of media coverage, what's your opinion on defunding the BBC?
Yeah, I'm definitely for defunding the BBC. I mean, it's an anachronism. I mean, back in, 100 years ago or 50 years ago, when it was the only television station, I mean, that was the model used to fund it. But now you've got 1,000 television stations. I mean, the BBC shouldn't be getting any money from a TV license. I mean, it's a system that's completely out of date. We need to end it, and it needs to fend for itself for 3 months.
Yeah, because there's plenty.
Can I play devil's advocate? But what about Strictly Come Dancing?
Oh.
Well, someone wants to make a program called Strictly Come Dancing and sell it onto a TV channel, and I'm sure they'll be very successful because a lot of people want to watch it. You don't need the BBC for that.
No.
Another commercial enterprise can do that.
Wish they would.
The BBC license, people don't have to pay for it.
No, that's true.
They just don't pay, and that's it, and they don't let them in when they come, and there's nothing. They might come randomly, and that's it.
And because they've lost a lot of following, they're now making the pensioners pay more, aren't they? So
Yeah.
which I think is rotten.
Everyone else.
Yeah.
To shut them down.
Guy Fawkes have a point.
Guy Fawkes.
Feeling for vendetta.
Yeah.
Good question. I don't know if I can answer that. The Heritage Party.
Okay, what they stand for, your main principles?
Yeah, well, defending our culture and heritage, standing up for free speech and liberty, traditional family values, low immigration, financial responsibility of government, self-sufficiency and skills. I think it goes along with low immigration, so that we train up our own young people to be doctors and nurses that we need, rather than taking people from other countries and depriving them of the nurses and doctors they've trained up, and so on. So those are some of the principles. You can look at our manifesto at heritageparty.org. Have a look, yeah.
Right, so you become a member of your party?
You can become a member. It's £25 a year to become a member, and then if you're a member, you can join a branch and stand as a candidate. Go through the training.
Have you got councillors?
Well, we're very new. We only got approval by the Electoral Commission. Yeah, please do. Join us in Haringey. We need someone in Haringey. Yeah.
So will you be planning to get an MP?
Well, I mean, the first thing is the London elections in May. Obviously, so I'm going to be standing for the London election and Mayor and Assembly. So we'll have a team standing for the Assembly because we go for the list as well. Then we'll be putting councillor candidates up for the council elections around the country in places like Kent, Essex, and Staffordshire and places like that around England too.
And in London,
well, not this year because the boroughs don't have elections until 2022. But then when that comes, we'll be putting up candidates in the boroughs as well. But yes, certainly when the general election comes around, we want to grow enough to be able to put candidates in every seat, in the general election. So hopefully then we'll get some MPs, and we can change things. And we got to change the system.
Look over there. Look. Coming again. Sorry.
Right. Yeah.
about carbon not working sound.
What's that?
Yeah, just what?
Oh.
with you.
Guys, do you think they're possibly coming to arrest us?
Oh, probably.
I'm not sure.
I hope not.
I hope not. They're all...
29 coming. I think
Oh my God. Just having an interview.
They're not going to arrest.
They can't be, can they? What's going on? Oh, let's go back here. Oh yeah. Sorry. That cut the interviews up. No, they're all going up there as well. They're going here and then they're going over there, guys. Look. Sorry about cutting that interview off.